Chapter 15 of the first book of Hard Times is a bit of a masterclass really in writing. It's often seen as one of Dickens' best sort of examples of writing really, for a whole host of reasons, which hopefully I'll sort of explain as I go through the chapter. This is where Gradgrind explains that Bounderby would like to marry Louisa, and he fails to see the fact that, you know, this is almost like that final nail in the coffin, I suppose, for a childhood. And that, you know, that youth has sort of really been totally wasted here. And what we get right towards the bottom of page 93, Gradgrind, we're told he waited as if he would have been glad that she said something, but she said never a word. So again, this silenced woman. And Louisa's silence here is really interesting and really ambiguous. On the one hand, she's passively accepting this life that's put to her. On the other hand, this is her form of sort of quiet rebellion, which I think Dickens pins down a lot more effectively than the much more melodramatic falling to the floor at the end of book 2. And we're told about a third of the way down page 94, strange to relate, Mr. Gradgrind was not so collected at this moment as his daughter was. So we get that idea that there is that emotion in Gradgrind in there deeply somewhere, and Dickens has been playing with this for a few chapters, hasn't he? That Gradgrind isn't all bad, that he's just covered up all of the good with statistics and with utilitarianism, and that actually it's Louisa who was born into the system, who is much more, you know, maybe unable to change. And then about 2/3 down page 94, when he, you know, reveals that Bounderby wants to marry Louisa, we get a great tiny little passage. Silence between them. The deadly statistical clock very hollow. The distant smoke very black and heavy. 3 really short sentences. Not a single verb there at all. Okay, Dickens is deliberately, you know, removing all verbs, taking out any movement, any action at all, to really emphasise that stillness and that silence, but also the fact that this is a moment that sums up the lack of movement for the characters, isn't it? It's the end really of Louisa's childhood, the end of anything really developing in life. This is her fire, you know, fully burning out, and Dickens shows it with the lack of verbs. The silence, again, the silenced woman. The statistical clock, again, Dickens is you know, giving us this clear symbol of time ticking away because of statistics, because of utilitarianism. And then we also get the smoke, which obviously has been linked to the fire throughout, and it's black and it's heavy, setting up this dark future of weight around Louisa. And the lack of verbs really add to all of those things, really. We told about 5 lines down on page 95. Mr. Bounderby does not do you the injustice and does not do himself the injustice of pretending to be anything fanciful, fantastic, or using the synonymous terms sentimental. Okay, so again, Bounderby set up as somebody who isn't imaginative, he's not fantastic or fantastical. Sentimental's put at the end of that list. Now, that was often a criticism levelled at Dickens. Oscar Wilde criticised the old Curiosity Shop because he said that nobody could see or read about the death of Little Nell without laughing. It was so ridiculous, it was so overly sentimental. And Dickens is really sort of defending himself here, putting at the end of that list, you know, by telling us that Bounderby isn't fantastical or fanciful or sentimental. Dickens is putting sentiment alongside imagination and fantasy and those things that are so important in this book. And although this chapter doesn't have them, this sets up the end of book 2 that is much more melodramatic, much more sentimental. And Dickens is almost, you know, expressing that as a necessary part of what is needed in this literature, whether that be highbrow or whether that be the lowbrow literature and entertainment of the circus. We're told about halfway down page 95, Gradgrind says, you are, as we will say in round numbers, 20 years of age. So again, even in the age, Gradgrind is determined to break it down and tabulate everything. There's that real link there between Louisa and Stephen and Rachel, who've also wasted their youth, and we've heard about them, and Dickens is sort of measuring it side by side. Again, like 96, page 96, about 3 lines down, Louisa returned her father. It appears to me that nothing can be plainer. Confining herself rigidly to fact, the question of fact you state yourself is, and he breaks his marriage proposal down to simple facts. And again, capitalising it, Dickens is reminding us of chapter 1, where we get told about a fact in the schoolroom, but Dickens focuses on what's not there. He's doing the same thing again here. By breaking this down to fact, we focus on what's not there, the emotion, the love, that are the necessary constituent parts of a loving relationship. Gradgrind says a few lines after that, to know that you do not come to the consideration of that question with the previous habits of mind and habits of life that belong to many young women. So Gradgrind saying basically, no, you need to approach this outside of the concerns of you know, normal young women. But again, the habits of mind, well, we know what these habits of mind are. They've been, drilled into Louisa from youth. So Dickens is really actually emphasising the fact that Louisa is behaving according to her habit, according to the utilitarian model. We're told about halfway down the page, as he now leaned back in his chair and bent his deep-set eyes upon her in his turn, perhaps he might have seen one wavering moment in her when she was compelled to throw herself upon his breast and give him the pent-up confidences of her heart. But see, he must have overleaped to bound the artificial barriers he had for many years been erecting between himself and all those subtle essences of humanity. So again, Dickens is really setting up the end of part 2 here, where Louisa pretty much does do that and falls down at his feet. It can't happen yet. We've got to have this real loss of innocence before it can be understood. It has to go before we can understand that it's missing. Just like in the schoolroom, Dickens has to draw attention to what's missing before we sort of really appreciate it. And it's the same thing here. We need this, just like with Stephen and Rachel. It has to be impossible for them to be together for them to sort of really appreciate and for us to appreciate what's going on. And we get another hint at the bottom of page 96. Louisa says fire bursts out, father. She's been compared to that fire throughout. And we get her again dwelling on that idea that she's ash, she's going to be this burnt out person, and all that emotion has got nothing to rest on. Dickens comments then, of course, I know that, Louisa, I do not see the application of the remark. Gradgrind says that. The narrator chips in, to do him justice, he did not at all. Page 96. That omniscient narrator again, chipping in, making it clear that actually Gradgrind isn't a bad person, that actually Gradgrind is just unable to see the ironies and see the reality of this situation. And then halfway down page 97, Louisa says a really key line, okay? She says, let it be so. Now, we've had let it be throughout, haven't we? That's a key motif in this novel. And here, Louisa saying, let it be. She's just passively accepting that this will be her life. Dickens reclaims the meaning of that phrase, doesn't he? By the end, he says, let them be, let things happen, let children be children. But here, it's the other way around. So again, Dickens is showing the problem with utilitarianism, the problem with laissez-faire economy that allows Stephen to be cast out by his men, the problem with utilitarianism that allows people like Louisa to be sort of stuck in these loveless marriages. And he's giving us the meaning of let it be at this point, which is just, let this just go on. And then he changes the meaning. So actually what he's saying is, no, let nature take its course, let things be natural, let things be okay. And there's an irony here, basically, that Louisa says, I'm satisfied to accept his proposal if he likes to take me thus. Okay, there's a real irony in what Louisa's saying. She's basically saying, I'm satisfied, I have to accept it. I've almost been backed into a corner and I need to accept this. And she tells the father, repeat it word for word if you can, because I should wish him to know what I said. So ironically, Louisa was finding her voice here. And really being quite witty in how she's, assenting to Bounderby while also actually criticising him and hinting that she doesn't want to get married at all. But she's doing it from Gradgrind to Bounderby. Gradgrind's telling Bounderby what she says. He won't grasp the irony in what she's saying. Bounderby won't grasp it either when he's hearing it. So again, it's this silenced woman. It's this woman, voicing a dissent, but in a language that's owned by men. And that's set up throughout this novel in this patriarchal society. We're told on page 98, about 7 or 8 lines down, that Louisa basically says, I've got no imagination, I've not had any room for it. And we're told as she said it, she unconsciously closed her hand as if upon a solid object and slowly opened it as though she were releasing dust or ash. So again, we've had the smoke, we've had the fire. That idea that at this moment, this is where the fire has kind of burnt out and Louisa is just the ash. It's very similar to the moment where Tom is biting the heads off the roses and letting the petals drift away. Both the Gradgrind children have these images linked to them of loss and of things, drifting away through their fingers or drifting away from them. Halfway down page 98, Louisa says, you've dealt so wisely with me, father, from my cradle to this hour, that I never had a child's belief or a child's fear. Dickens interposes with a bit of humour. Mr. Gradgrind was quite moved by his success. So again, Louisa's basically saying, I've not had a childhood, but Gradgrind doesn't see the irony of that. He thinks, oh great, I've done such a great job. God bless utilitarianism. So again, Dickens is playing with that irony. And then right at the end of this chapter is the final sort of key moment where Sissy looks at Louisa, and Louisa knows that Sissy sort of pities her. So we're told, when Mr. Gradgrind had presented Mrs. Bounderby, Sissy had suddenly turned her head and looked in wonder, in pity, in sorrow, in doubt, in a multitude of emotions towards Louisa. Louisa had known it and seen it without looking at her. From that moment she was impassive, proud and cold, held Sissy at a distance, changed to her altogether. Again, wonder is at the first of that list of emotions that Sissy feels. Because Sissy can wonder, she can see the truth. She can grasp these ironies that Bounderby and Gradgrind and Tom cannot. And Louisa also sees it. We've had that link sort of established throughout the earlier chapter about Sissy's progress. And we sort of shown that Louisa is impassive, proud and cold as a sort of barrier, as a defence mechanism. She knows that Sissy sort of sees the truth, but her fire's burnt out and all she can do is just be passive and standoffish and sort of separate. And that sets up the way that basically it's Sissy who has the wonder in the imagination, who has the children at the end, and it's Louisa who, despite sort of being redeemed up to a point, can never have that because at this moment, I think more than any other, her fire has broken out and burnt out, leaving her only with the ash. And that's why this is, for me, one of the best chapters of the book and one of the best chapters that Dickens has written.